Hey guys, welcome back to Studio Nights. Today we're here with the principal of L2 Studios, Debra Lemmons. Welcome, Debra.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Yay. It's exciting to be here, ladies.
In addition to running your own firm, right, alongside your husband, you're heavily involved in the architecture community here in Orlando. You collaborate with organizations like AIA, OFA, and OCAN, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. So we really want to talk a little bit about what inspired you to pursue architecture and just design, and how did that path kind of find you in starting your own firm?
Okay, that's a great question. It was not a traditional path, I guess, when I was young. I'm much younger than you all. So let's just say back in the 80s when I was trying to decide what career path I would take, I always knew I would go to college and do something. I was interested in the arts. I was active in the art club and everything in high school. As a younger child, I had very traditional parents and grandparents who gave me a dollhouse when I was little, but I didn't like to play with dolls. I wanted to play with the house and with the space and doing things with the space. And I was very aware of space early on, but had no idea that that was something I could do as a career, what that meant. So someone eventually guided me into interior design. And so maybe you should consider that. So I pursued an undergraduate in a Bachelor of Fine Arts in interior design. So I was able to get an art core degree. So all the fine arts and a lot of studio time and a lot of different mediums, but then interior design was added to that as part of the core. Loved it, graduated from college with honors, and it was in the Great Recession of Texas in the early 90s, and I ended up being kind of stuck out in West Texas in Lubbock, and stayed there for about a year and a half, during which time I was encouraged to go and get my master's. I was very bored and not working in a job. I was underemployed, let's call it that. I was working as a receptionist for a furniture store, drawing floor plans for designers who really weren't designers. They were housewives looking for free furniture and discounted furniture. So it was a humbling experience, but eventually I was like, I need more than this. And so I went back to school and pursued my Master of Architecture. And it took about 2.5, 3 years to do that because it was it was designated as an unrelated undergraduate. So I had to essentially start over, even though I was teaching drawing classes. I knew how to, draft and do all the drawing principles and design space from the inside. But I needed to make up time in the design studio and in the building systems categories. So it took about 2.5, 3 years to get a master's. It should have taken one for any other traditional undergrad. Best thing I ever did, though. So from there forward, I've been able to work in both disciplines simultaneously, or sometimes I'll be heavier in architecture and sometimes I'll be heavier in interiors. I've led a lot of interior design teams and created teams over and over again as practices have evolved and recessions have hit and so forth. But it's been a perfect balance of both, and easily the best career choice I ever made. So.
Wow, that's great. And you did study at Texas
Tech for both degrees. Same. Yeah, I probably should have gone somewhere else for grad school, but life had me there. I was married at the time to my first husband, and he's probably the one. He was an architecture student as well, and he's the one that encouraged me to go get the master's, and so I do have him. I have him to thank. Yeah.
So you would say he was the main reason for you to go into the Masters of Architecture?
Yes, I would. Yeah. I would give him full credit for that.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. Yeah. So how did you end up here in Florida?
So unfortunately, that marriage didn't last much longer than grad school, and life kind of bebopped me around a little bit from firm to a few different firms. I moved to Dallas. I worked in Lubbock for a while, and then I moved to Dallas. Worked for Corrigan, fresh out of grad school, in the Dallas office. It was quite exciting. Jack Corrigan himself interviewed me and hired me, and that was exciting. Also, they were very excited about having a dual degreed person that I would be able to join multiple teams. They had 7 different studios at the time, and so that was an exciting recruiting opportunity. Didn't quite work out that way. I ended up working in a smaller team that I was a little bit lost in. I was kind of marching around doing cubicle reconfiguration for Southwestern Bell. I hate to say anything more than that, but it wasn't challenging. And over time, I kind of felt a little lost in the company and said, I need something smaller. I want to get my hands on everything and really grow. And I don't feel like I'm going to grow for a year and a half of counting cubicle parts and respace planning. So sounds very arrogant, but I just wanted more. I'd worked really hard and I wanted to do more.
With that dual degree.
Yes. Yeah. So ended up going to a smaller firm in Dallas and loved it because I just learned so much. I've had great mentors in all the firms that I was at, and eventually got adventurous and said, I'm going to go to Orlando. And again, personal life choices brought me to Orlando that changed again once I got to Orlando. But ended up joining the firm that at the time was under a different name. But Tim Lemmons was actually the founder of the firm, and I did not create the firm. I joined the firm as an employee, and because of the dual discipline, and at that time the firm was 4 people. So I mean, I was literally at the grassroots ground floor of it. And so we decided pretty early on to start an interiors side of the practice. It was heavy into hospitality and design for hotels and resorts. Interiors was an integral part of that. A lot of our clients, I didn't practice it right away. I was designing the buildings, working on site design and building envelope design and planning and so forth, and supporting Tim in a lot of those areas. He was managing those clients. And then when the clients started realizing that the narrative, my process involved a narrative about understanding the place and how we bring the story of the place into the project and the building planning, and how we can choreograph the experience from the arrival onto the property, how you park your car, how you see the building, how you find the entrance, what you experience all along the way that can immerse you into that resort experience. And they realized we could bring that to interiors as well, and said, well, why don't you do that? And we're like, well, we not really set up to do that. Well, why not? And so that was kind of the catalyst that made us start the interiors practice on that side. So we've been successful with that ever since. Interiors has carried us through numerous recessions when development and ground up building stopped. And interiors carries for a while. And, we've had a very good balance. We've had a lot of cases where clients will hire interiors and contract locally with an architect if it's a project out of state. Sometimes we're architects that work with other interiors. So it really keeps us very agile and flexible in that.
One of the things you said is super important because we do talk about it a lot, especially being so young in the profession that you go into a firm or a few firms and then you get stuck in doing a specific thing that probably you say, well, this is probably the best thing I'm going to get because I'm new. But is it the best? I feel like we've studied so hard and we are like doing all these things, and you can never be afraid of just asking for a little bit more or putting yourself out there or saying, okay, this is not for me. I need to keep looking. And so I think that's great.
It's a fine line. You don't know what you don't know. And I think what you all are doing with this platform is great because it does open your eyes to, and others' eyes to, there's so many paths in this career. I mean, whether you stay in the traditional practice and find your niche in various markets or various phases of a project. If you love the technicals, not in this, by the way, I'll caveat, you can be creative and technical at the same time. You don't have to be either or. So don't let anyone tell you, oh, she's just a creative or she's just the technical person. Don't involve her in design or something like that. You can do both. Absolutely. That's why we're architects. So just being able to open your eyes to all the possibilities. And I think my advice would be always be curious, keep your ears open to what's happening around you. Even if you're assigned this task, yes, do the task and do it well. But that is a key to finding that path, is finding what you love and being curious, is just look and listen and engage. So.
I think that's great. And the other thing that we were talking about as well, that really stood out to us in our conversation, is just learning about how your work and the work you do at your firm, it really influences just not like the hospitality projects and this like idea of, immerse people, immerse the community and this whole experience, but how you said in hospitality is like a mindset, not like an industry. And I think that's very well said. And it's just like a reminder for every day of every little thing you do is an
Mhm.
experience for whoever's going through it,
Mhm.
right? Even if you do the restroom, like that could be a whole
Absolutely.
experience.
Absolutely.
And I think if you can tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of you have heard of or read the book, The Experience Economy. That was, gosh, it came out maybe in the 90s. It's a great book even today because it does speak to not only creating the artificial experiences and the immersive experiences. For example, we're in the heart of all the theme parks and Disney and everything.
Yeah.
That was part of it, but it's also being sensitive to what consumer trends are. And right now the consumer trends are heavy on authenticity and experience. So crafting, and we value experience differently. We don't just pay for it for our vacation. Now we value it as our everyday life. And so if I go to a restaurant, I want something unique, whether I have my hands on and I want to help make it, or I want the farm to table experience. I mean, there's so many layers to creating that. But you also think about, for the few years that I worked in healthcare and thinking about patient experience, caregiver experience, that translates also to employee experience. It's how are you getting the most out of their performance, their health, their wellness, while they are working for you, or in the case of the patient experience, what is the best outcome because you've crafted that space with their experience in mind. Caregiver experience, any of those things. So it's just being sensitive to, again, as I mentioned, the choreography of how you immerse someone in their day, in their world. How do you beautifully and or efficiently get them from point A to point B that just brings an ounce of joy and delight to their day that they might not have gotten if you just did it very pragmatic way, of solving the space plan or solving the boxes and the square footage analysis. And so it's just being thoughtful and going a little bit above and beyond to do that. If you have the luxury of really researching and understanding the consumer trends and forecasting a little bit more, and that's where you can cross markets and look at what, when I worked in healthcare, I brought hospitality to healthcare. From my experience, I needed to learn healthcare, and I did, but in the meantime, brought hospitality to it. Going back to hospitality, there was so much I learned about wellness and learned about, clean spaces, and you can make clean spaces be beautiful, and you can still craft how people move through space that can transform their minds and how they think of something. They leave their stress at the door and kind of evolve as they get from point A to point B. So it works in any market. We have done, my partner has an expertise in advanced manufacturing. Okay, well, that's the farthest away from, but we worked on some boat manufacturers and, and they have a sales experience and a customer experience. They also have an employee experience. The factory workers that have their breaks in the heat in an unair conditioned corner of the factory floor. Well, creating their respite area and their break room space was important. And it won us the project because we talked about the employee experience. So.
Yeah. I do have a question. How would you describe your design process to get to that point? Because I feel like obviously you can have the way I take it is I have these words, I make this collage of what experience I want. So how would you go about it?
I always start with research, and that's just where the technical and the science meets the art. Part of that was my own learned. I'm a geek for research, but I also never wanted to be uninformed. I didn't want to sit in a room and profess something or promote a design that came out of my head or my heart and convince somebody without an element of legitimacy and data. And so I always started with research and then I look at precedents and I look at, not to plagiarize, but just to look at what works, what doesn't work. And sometimes those precedents are not in the same market. And after that, then it kind of, you've got all that as you've kind of fueled your mental or creative bank account with that data. And then you just let your intuition and you just choreograph it as you go. A lot of those design principles from school or things I learned from my mentors, things I've learned from my own mistakes, of frame those views, don't terminate a corridor with a door, it's sometimes forcing perspective or relieving the perspective to give a different vantage point. One of my favorite projects, not with L2, but one of my favorite projects of all times probably was working on a hospital a ground up hospital project, interior only. I wasn't the architect, but the interior design and the interior architecture. And that client had a value system based on, you know it well, creation health, the CREATION, and each one of those stood for something, but it was always executed in posters and graphics on the walls. It's like, how do we create space that gives you different outlook, that promotes nutrition, that promotes fitness, that promotes change of perspective? And taking every one of those acronyms, I pulled that in and challenged myself with, and then the team with, how do we choreograph the space so that the patients and the family members and the caregivers feel creation health in that. And so anyway, it was a fun test of their own philosophy and their own, I think it's just finding those cues that are the values of your client, and then be the client, walk through the day in the life of the client and their people. So
yeah, it almost reminds me of our D1 and D2 projects where we literally had to take D1, D2 as in design 1 and design 2 undergrad, for those of our listeners that don't understand. But it reminds me of those classes where we had to take a word. It was either like envelope or something with music, repetition, harmony. Senses. Where it's just one word and we had to make an architecture space. Yep. And I've noticed that now, like at work, I'm working on something right now and I'm looking at the words and I'm actually like trying to understand them, because I know that there's space in those words. Like there's this whole experience now that we understand about experiences, about this kind of creation of this moment at the end. But I go back to my D1 and D2 classes and understand my professors as to why they were trying to get us to really, really understand what harmony meant, what repetition meant to you. Like it doesn't, not necessarily, it could go by the definition, but in a specific movie or in a specific song, what does that mean and how can that space really show up in design?
I always say, if I knew then what I know now, I would have had a whole lot more fun. It would have been so much more fun and easy. And had I just let myself go and understand that, but I was so a rule follower and there's a formula and there's a this and that, but to let your brain and yet I was in art school, but I didn't have to worry about concepts. It was just,
Aren't we called the translators for design and buildings and spaces? Like we're supposed to be the translating piece from the client to the design. We are the translator.
Yeah, because we touch every part. You know what I mean? Like we're the space planning, the exterior, the interior, how we're connecting and working around the structural and that,
and all of it's an opportunity. Yes. Every bit of it is an opportunity. Exactly. It's for someone to go, I stuck a column in the middle of it. How unfortunate. No. Well, I guess it's just going to be there. And then you're like, no, we're going to celebrate that. We're going to do something with it. And I don't believe in obstructions. I don't believe in, leaving the ugly and just going, oh, well, let's do something with it. Many times over, you just, I don't know how you guys do it too, but you're grinding away on your space plan, let's say, or an elevation study or something. And you're just not getting there. And, the program just doesn't fit, and you have to back up. It's like you can't keep hitting your head against that same wall, and you back up and go another direction. You set this aside and go, okay, I might have to come back, but my brain is not going to solve that one. Come back. And it does take time, and it does say, oh, it's 10 o'clock and I was going to go home, but I'm going to try this one other direction. And I'll be darned if it doesn't happen. You throw a curve into it, throw an angle into it, reshuffle the shapes of the rooms, get out of your box mode, and then suddenly magic happens. And you do have to think about it and then celebrate the crazy things that systems puts in there for you, the ducks that through, it's always the fun one. It surprises you in the field, and then you got to figure it out.
Oh yeah, those are,
Then there's little curse words that come out.
I feel that's what I love about the collaborative side of what we do is I don't know something and maybe you don't know something, but this person can inform us about that. And I don't know about the MEP system or the structural system, but let me sit and talk with my engineers, my consultants, and like learn about what works best for you and how can I work around, because in the end, like it just makes us better designers.
Absolutely.
You know? And we talk about this a lot. That's what I like about when we're looking at what we learn in school versus what we learn in the profession. That side for me was like huge, where I get to collaborate with not just people like on my side of the fence, but like the people on the other side as well.
Absolutely. There's so many ways to solve the problem. And yeah, engineers are going to do things the way they're used to doing it, just like that's human nature. But when we can challenge each other and share the ultimate goal and vision with them, so many times engineers don't see the vision. They were never given the design presentation. They've never seen the rendering. They're given base plans or models, and they just crank out what they know.
That is so true. They haven't.
When they see the vision, they get excited and they go, "Oh, I think we can do this. Oh, I see why you don't want the diffusers in that ceiling or the access panels or we can figure out a way to do that duct so that you can make that space, that ceiling height happen." Same for contractors. Always give them your design presentation. Make them special. Bring them in. Give them a design presentation, because if they have your vision, they will protect it.
That's such a good.
When they don't have it,
that's such a good. I haven't even thought of that.
Send them your renderings. They'll put them up in the trailer. Have boards put out when you're doing your framing walkthrough, so that your clients and your subs can all see the picture of the end game of what they're looking for.
Yeah.
So I didn't learn that till late, but once I did, I'm like, they were like, "Why didn't you show us this sooner?" Even on OCAD, when we were presenting, when we were, working, we talk OCAD later, but when we were talking to people for donations and in-kind services and those things, once the subs were brought in by the contractor and we gave them the same pitch we were giving everyone else, they were like, "Oh, I've got a guy. I've got some studs laying around in my warehouse, and I've got a sub that'll," and so many things came to the table through the subs simply because they were brought to the table and part of the design process. So.
We were just at Chicago. We came back on Sunday and we did the architecture boat tour, and they take you through all the skyscrapers and everything. And we were literally talking in the boat about this building. What was the name of the building? The whole base. It's like this crazy building.
Yep. How did they do that?
On the edge of the river.
Edge of the river.
We know exactly which one.
Concrete that is the only thing that's holding it up.
And it's like angled in. Like the bottom of it is a V. Like a V is what's holding it up.
It's just teetering there, right?
It is like super high. And we're like, how does this work?
And we were literally saying that structural engineer and the architect were, they
shared a vision from the beginning.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And those guys have just as much to promote of themselves as the architects. We get the finished product and the monument that everybody sees, but there are ways that they can be showcased as well if they're just brought to the vision early, but they're often shoehorned in after the fact.
Exactly. I love that viewpoint, just because I'm so used to, at least in what people say and everything, they're like, "Oh, I'm just a dumb architect. Oh, these contractors don't know what they're doing. Oh, these subcontractors." It frustrates me, because I'm like, at the end of the day, if we don't do this as a team effort, then it's not going to get done.
Yeah.
It's just a nightmare.
It's not going to be
and it's going to be a nightmare.
And it'll cost everybody more, because we'll have mistakes. You can pay for it now, or you can pay for it in construction. You're going to spend your fee, your time. You can do it right in the front time or the front end, or you can do it again in the second and third phase.
Exactly.
So we want to get into the conversation of the community work that you do here locally in Orlando. So we have an organization here called OFA can you give, for our listeners who don't know what OFA is, can you give kind of an overview of what that organization is and does?
Sure. The OFA is short for the Orlando Foundation for Architecture. It was conceived as an organization by the Orlando chapter for AIA starting back in 2010.
Oh, wow.
So it has been a long-term vision to have a foundation that promotes architecture and design and the built environment in general in the community. It serves as a sister organization to the AIA, or the Orlando chapter of AIA. It's a 501c3, whereas AIA is 501c6, so just a slightly different tax structure and not-for-profit. So it enables those that want to contribute to the organization or contribute to architecture and the AIA community. It gives a kind of a holding place for that. It administers the scholarships or for architecture students in the community. But I think the biggest mission and vision for OFA has been and remains, we're the outreach arm on behalf of design professionals that really create that connection to the community and improving the condition of our cities and our built environment in the cities, potentially even helping to solve civic issues, community issues, whether it's affordable housing or sustainability or traffic control or whatever. Every community has their issues and their growing pains, or sometimes their dying pains. They need revitalization, and we've got so many great things happening in some of our blighted districts and things that are now great destinations because somebody had a conversation and had a vision. So OFA's mission is really to continue that conversation, facilitate the conversation, create venues and tours and programs that bring not only design professionals together, but also people from the community and make it real and make it approachable. That we're not just some little club of architects that sit in a little room talking with ourselves about how important we are. It's more about, we are stewards of the built environment and of the community we live in. And so how do we share that and improve it?
So you are now a committee chair for OFA.
I am the chair of the board of trustees for OFA. OFA as a structure has 9 trustees, 5 of which are appointed by the AIA, because again, we are very tight sister organizations and kind of birthed from AIA. And so they right now maintain control of some of those appointments, and then the others are voted in from the trustees individually. So we have different than AIA, we have a much more diverse board. The goal was to be not just architects. That's what AIA does. That's for them. They're a member-centric organization serving its members and allied members, the vendors and the suppliers and the engineers and things that support the architects. OFA is intended to be kind of community-wide. So anyone from the community, from leadership in the city, from land developers, land attorneys, anybody that really touch it and have a passion for what we're doing in the built environment, they're welcome to be members of OFA and to serve in a leadership position outside of the 5 that the AIA appoints. So that's what's really exciting, is it opens our eyes to what are the real issues. What does the community think of what we're doing? How can we improve upon that? The perceptions of, I'm just a dumb architect. Nobody knows, we should never say that. And so, it's about more of just the PR and the outreach to the community and make it a better connection.
Now we have OCAD. Would you say that kind of evolved from OFA or became an extension from OFA and AIA? That's
a great question. In 2010, when the board at that time, the AIA board at that time, had this vision for, they called it Legacy 2020, and you can read about that on the AIA Orlando website. It really was this manifesto of what we want to do with our city and with our profession in the city. And it outlines a number of very significant goals for the chapter and eventually for OFA to embark upon those goals to make those changes and progress. 2020, in the Legacy 2020 title, was really driven by bringing the National AIA Convention to Orlando. Set our goals. Any good organization, any good professional, any person, the way to get somewhere is to set the goals. And they outline those goals to, let's bring the convention here. It's a huge revenue producing opportunity. It'll put us on the map. It'll really be a big thing for our chapter. And so creation of OFA, the foundation, was one of those criteria to help attract the national convention. People that were looking at where to put the convention in the years to come. That was one of the kind of drivers of, do you have a foundation? How established are you? So the OCAD stands for Orlando Center for Architecture and Design. So creating a center for architecture, we added and design later. That was also listed as one of the goals, so that we could have a destination and a venue for promoting this programming and this dialogue and are these activities that bring the community and the professionals together. So you were just in Chicago. You saw the Design Center probably. That's where you got your tickets for the boat tour.
Yeah.
And San Francisco has one. Dallas has ADEX. Houston, Boston, if you went to National last year was in Boston. They have a center. So they're all different sizes, all different levels of elaborate, expense.
Yeah.
The original vision probably was to create a big monument, a big building somewhere that was on donated land and, millions and millions of dollars. 15, 20 years later, that still hadn't happened. So finally, the catalyst really was when COVID happened. AIA had an office. OFA shares and shared staff with them, shared space with them, closed the office to save money. Nobody was meeting in person anyway. So that was in 2020. And we've been kind of homeless ever since. We at an AIA and OFA, we're having to have our meetings, our board meetings in people's offices or virtual. We're having to do, allied breakfasts and things. It's not the same as it was. We've evolved well, we've adapted well, but it's still, we've missed having a home base. So it was a joint initiative of AIA and OFA to put ourselves back in an office, but instead of it being just a B-class, cost-effective, budget-driven tenant space, let's go for it and do the center, perhaps in a smaller scale as kind of a pilot test to make sure that, number one, we're good stewards of our resources, but we're also, making sure our membership and our community are vested also in it and believe in it and value it. If there's no reason to build a monument if no one's going to use it. So we are enjoying getting that off the ground this year.
That's great.
This is exciting because we've gone to a couple of the site visits for the OCAD construction. It's been cool to see
slow.
It's slow and it's small, but I think
it's so exciting.
It's kind of cooler that way because you get to, you don't go from empty to the walls are up and closed now. You get to see the progression of that and learn about, the different things are changing with what was existing there. I think it used to be like a JCPenney or something.
JCPenney back in the 60s. In fact, my husband/partner, he did the build out for converting JCPenney to the traffic courts building back in the early 90s.
Oh, wow.
So it was, anyway, it's had a lot of life. And so the mezzanine, you see the ceiling that's in there. We have partly exposed concrete structure, and then we have a metal deck up there.
Yeah.
The metal deck was a mezzanine that he had added. There were a lot of factors that went into finding that space, but we couldn't have ended up, I don't think, with a better location and a better space that we can kind of use as a lab. I mean, we've intentionally kept it raw. It was gutted and raw when we got the space. We didn't have to pay to demolish anything. And it allows people such as yourselves to come in, and even the public to come in and see what the bones of a building look like that are usually covered up. And yet we can still celebrate design in and around those bones without covering everything up.
Yeah.
Also was a more cost-effective way of doing it, but we're embracing it. It's a great space. It's got that Orange Avenue frontage. We hope to have office hours or center hours that will be open on Saturdays when tourists are downtown or people are just hanging out between soccer matches, and want to go check out and get a gift or something, in there, see an exhibit. So we're excited where it is. It's got great proximity to the city and all of the government offices, the DTO. I mean, all the tourist places where Visit Orlando says, go check this out downtown. And, you go get information about downtown. Now OCAD is one of those.
That's really cool. So for our listeners who don't know, it's on the corner of Orange and Jefferson Street. Yeah. Right across from the parking lot. 2
blocks, I think, from Art Squared. We're 1 block from Art Squared. All the cultural things that are happening and artistic things that are happening. We've got all those pocket parks that are happening with art and architecture. We are now part of that scene. And so I said it couldn't have been a better, we looked at numerous sites and opportunities, and this one just kind of finally it took a lot, but it finally fell into place. So we're very excited.
I think something really cool is being able to involve the community outside of architecture. So I can imagine younger kids who have been like fascinated with architecture or like that kind of design being able to come into a space and like maybe do activities that like are like, a younger version of like what we would do in school. That's like crazy. You know what I mean? But like to be an outlet for them to also kind of explore what we do, but for them, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're not involved really in architecture.
You are spot on as to the audience that we are. That's an easy, low-hanging fruit is bringing up young people that have no idea, or maybe they have a little bit of an idea. Back in the day, we had the Brady Bunch. That's how we knew what I thought. Well, we knew what I don't know if you've ever seen the Brady Bunch, but for your older listeners, they'll appreciate this. But there was this mystique about what architecture was, and I don't know how many of you or your friends say, "Oh, I've always wanted to be an architect, but I'm not good at math."
All the time.
I
had that conversation today.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
I can't draw, or I can't.
Yeah.
It's like, oh no.
Yeah.
There's so much more to it than that, and bringing them into the fold, bringing them in early, and just showing them that, and then all the different paths that it could be.
Mm-hmm.
And so we do have a number. My team, so many of them are here tonight, have been developing programming that involves Lego workshop. We have even gone so far as have a little student, or not student, but young person competition that, or maybe it's build your favorite Orlando building in Legos, or it depends on how advanced or where we want to go. But our goal is to have a number of those workshops in the center on a Saturday, or eventually some summer camps in the years to come, drawing workshops, or even as we get a little older, students that are looking to. Maybe they're sophomores in high school, or, they're just starting to think about it, and they want to come meet an architect. And there's 3 or 4 people that, come in from the community on revolving Saturdays or something. I mean, we've got a lot of different structures set up and programs set up for different age groups. My husband and I used to teach, we'd go in, I don't know if you had teach-ins when you were in little school and elementary and middle school, but we would go and play with our graham crackers and marshmallows and pretzel sticks and build buildings and teach them about structure and, at a very elementary level. But, you can play with your food and come in and build buildings with it. And so there's a lot of ideas at the table for bringing young ones in. But in addition to the students, it's also having roundtables, having, community members, city leaders, corporate leaders come in and talk about the real issues of Orlando and find a heart project that OFA and AIA together can maybe help with an initiative, return to being leaders in the community, not just waiting for the next commission, not just waiting for the next project, and finding our voice again in the city. So that's an initiative too that we're looking to do, is mix it up and bring those conversations to the table.
I love that.
That's very exciting.
Yeah,
I feel like
exciting.
Yeah, I feel like when I studied architecture, a lot of my understanding of architecture was through YouTube videos.
Yeah,
kids are going to be able to have that opportunity to meet an architect when they're young and actually get a little taste of what architecture is all about.
And they'll never do a math problem. They'll never, it's not saying there's not math, but they'll never. There's so much more to it, and just being given the freedom to express themselves and discover, and at that age it's intuition, and they're just it's play. And there's so many. There's also a perception that architecture is kind of the gentleman's or the wealthy person's profession. Architecture school is so expensive, and I'm going to be so far in debt. It is an expensive major. We have so many supplies and computer software and all that stuff that has to happen, but it is accessible. There are ways, and that's what we want to be able to communicate to students from all demographics, walks of life, neighborhoods, whatever.
The process of OCAD, the space, I would love to, I guess, for us and for our listeners to know, if possible, how that space came to be and like what has been going into it, and the fact that it's donors.
Because a lot of people are volunteering.
Volunteering, right?
Which I think are the challenges.
Challenges.
I think, for one, there's something poetic and like really beautiful about creating a community space from like people giving their own time, like volunteering their own time to make it happen. And it would be run by people giving their own time to continue it.
Absolutely. Again, it's a member serving and nonprofit combination of organizations. So there aren't huge reserves. There aren't huge there's a lot of demand on the funds that both organizations have for programming and sustaining of staff and now paying rent. Mm-hmm. And so we have to be very, very fiscally responsible, and, we answer to our members and those people that have donated funds to the organizations because their hearts are in it.
Yeah.
The journey has been interesting. It was a very, 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 very fast track, aggressive goal. To again, we've been spending so much money on storage units, and, we're losing ground with the building of both brands because we didn't have a place and a space and an identity. And so there were some very lofty goals set by both organizations to make this happen in a certain timeline. We haven't met the timeline, but we're close. But it was simply a very, very strong initiative to find the space. That was several months. We were pretty well on schedule in finding the space, negotiating the lease, getting that done. Then we entered into a lot of discussions about, now what do we do? Who designs it? How do we engage the members and the profession? Because this is a space for all, so it can't be exclusive. We have to manage our optics. We need to manage, it needs to be as inclusive as we can make it, but we know too that time is money. We have signed this lease. We need to get in.
Yeah.
And there's no time to open it up to an 8-month competition, or there just wasn't time for this one. One day there will be a permanent, monument called the Center for Architecture and Design, but right now it's a more streamlined process. So there was an initiative team that was created and it was a collaborative process creating that team of a number of stakeholders that had contracting experience, architecture, of course, project management experience, and owners reps and management of budgets and all of that. The design in the programming aspect, it was set up in 2010. They spelled out exactly what should be in this space. And then we, since it's been 15 years later, we needed to evolve that.
Yeah.
And define, okay, how many staff today do we have? How do we future-proof it if we're anticipating growth? How many could we have? How are we going to fill the space proportionally from work area and staff space to the rest of the space for our members and the public? And so really defining that program with also a committee effort with feedback from major stakeholder firms and member firms that, are the bigger donors, our engineers, our architects, etc. Then we opened it up to a kind of a survey. There was a survey that went out to the community, but also to members of OFA and AIA. If we had an activity or a tour, we invited people that might not have been members of OFA yet, but we invited them to participate in a survey of, did they know what a Center for Design was? Had they ever been to one? What would they expect to see at one? How can we serve you in this space? Those types of questions. In that same survey, we had a Miro board set up where people could upload sketches or thoughts or inspiration images. So it was the closest thing we could do in a short amount of time to get input from the stakeholders and those people that truly were vested in the center. But then it came down to just boots on the ground, get it done. And so a firm had to be the architect of record. We have partner firms with the engineering team. So am I allowed to do the pitches of we've got a great, very streamlined team of structural. There's not very much structural, but what structure is there is critical to tie into the existing and hold this beautiful glass operable wall and that are going to, that's instrumental in how that space works and flexes. So there's a little bit of structural provided by BBM Structural, who's been a major, major contributor to both AIA and OFA through the years. TLC is our engineer for MEP and fire protection, and they've also been major contributors and partners. So they're vested, and here they are donating their services after giving all this money year after year to support both organizations. Larry Trobo is doing our low voltage and AV, and then L2's architect of record and design. But we've had design collaboration with Hunt and Brady, with DLR. Carly at DLR has been doing a lot of the spearheading of furniture and also kind of managing the materials and keeping record of what sustainable products and, material, the recording of all of that. So, that's just the beginning of when you start to talk about then how once we put it out there and promoted the design and got the feedback on the design, the vendors and suppliers that have come forward with in-kind product, in-kind donations of services, of products, it's unbelievable the quality of the center that is going to happen that we couldn't have paid for in today's construction dollars. We had a budget that was realistic, but we've seen such volatility in the construction market that we had no idea how it was going to flex. But the supplier and the vendor market the response has been amazing.
Everybody putting their little grain of salt. Yeah.
Well, and balancing that is interesting too, because there are a lot of products and vendors out there that want to participate, but having to edit a little bit, this isn't the showroom. Maybe one day a center can have a showroom component for products, and maybe we'll have a component where we can rotate products and have exhibits, and maybe there's a way to do that, and that's not off the table. But for the opening and for the design, it would have been very easy and very tempting to overstuff the design with all the greatest and latest and shiniest of everything, and to really edit ourselves and then politely edit our people that have offered things, to be able to say, not today, but maybe tomorrow, but let's find another way that you can participate, because we really intentionally kept it a clean canvas of neutral and quiet and not overstuffed, so that the exhibits, the people, the presenters are the subject and are the color. And so it's a pretty humble space, but it's hopefully elegant and well executed. So.
And that right now that we were at Chicago, we were in their center over there. They had this new exhibition. I think tying vendors to the message also you want to give is great. And that's what we saw over there. They had this whole exhibition about birds.
Oh, yeah.
Dying. When they fly into the windows of their skyscraper. So the whole exhibit, and it was a new thing the lady was telling us, right? The whole exhibit was about all this type of glass that can happen for bird safety and stop killing birds and the environment. And, so they tie their product with kind of like their vision. And
like a heartstring.
Really. And it was so like
interesting.
Insightful.
And then we would notice the
them.
bird safe glass, like in that in the
building
center, they have it. In the zoo, I think they had it.
Yeah, they had it in the zoo.
So people not being architecture related, they go into these exhibits and everything is tied, the type of glasses they're understanding, and then they see it out in their buildings, and it connects
the public. The public gets it.
It connects on your,
Absolutely. And I know that's one thing, a conversation that we're having right now with OFA and AI are doing more of a joint strategic plan for the next 3 years. We're in the middle of crafting that right now. And when you read the vision and mission of AI National and what their, long-term and their big-term goals are, and, carbon neutral this and, 33 and, just getting all, I don't even know all but AI National kind of sets the cadence and sets the vision for all of us as a profession. And it trickles down into the chapters. And so working with our chapter and OFA as the messenger of that is really, we need to drive that home in our strategic plan, that it's not just about the latest, greatest, shiniest revenue producing programs. It's about what are we saying to the community and how are they responding, and being able to educate them on exactly things like that, or how we're building, and then bringing the vendors in to do exhibits and talks about, that not just to the architects with CEUs, but also, to the public that might want a better understanding of, I would like to be more sustainable when I do my home renovation in the historic district. Or by the way, how do I do a home renovation in the historic district? Let's let them be part of it and be resources to them. And I think that's a kind of zooming out a little bit. We sometimes find ourselves in this checklist of all of our programs and, how much money did we make on that? And we forget that there's a bigger mission and bigger connection we can make.
100%.
I mean, you guys started perfectly with going to the community to ask for what you want. It's super
we didn't get hundreds of responses.
But you got responses.
We got a very strong, a pretty good response to be able to say, we put it out there. We did it in a very short amount of time. We had to deliver this center quickly. It's time. Members are waiting. It's time. And, one day there'll be a bigger one in a design competition, and we'll do it a different way. But this one, I think, it'll be well received. So
it's going to be exciting for sure. I remember going back to the The birds. Going into the exhibition, I didn't notice until afterwards. There was a table for the kids. Like they had kid activities,
cool.
and like we were sitting there as big kids.
We have proof.
But it was just so neat to see that even though it's an exhibition that usually older people kind of look in and read and everything, there was still a space for kids to learn and understand and maybe build like bird houses
and bird glass thing. I don't know.
Like the different ways you can protect the glass against the birds. But I don't know. I just thought it was so cool because it goes back to that fact of being able to connect both the community and not just the community of architects, but the community of those that are
community
just
in general.
Absolutely. Well, if you follow consumer trends through the last few decades, it was always the man of the house made the decisions. And then it was the woman of the house made the decisions. And always appeal to the woman. Always she's the one that's really going to make the decision. Now it's the kids. So because of social, and the parent, because the way the generations have come, if you're an 80s kid or you're a 90s kid or whatever, there's reactions to the previous generation of authority. And now the generations of parents, some will say overindulge the kids or whatever, but kids have a voice that they have never had before. And so if you can get to the kid, you got to the mom, you got to the pocketbook, so, the wallet, whatever we call it today, but you got to the credit card. So I think they do have a tremendous amount of influence, but if you also, in a more positive light, think they're the future. So if they have an understanding now of how the planet works, how the world works, how life works, then they'll be more respectful of it and more motivated and can spark that inspiration early. So.
That's exciting. Well, we know that you're very busy and we were wondering, how do you balance?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I'm doing a good job of it. You just do it. You just dig deep. I don't know if that's a woman thing or a man thing or an everybody thing, but you just dig deep. And if you're doing what you love, you just dig deep and do it. You love your people. You love your family. You love your job. You just keep digging. I haven't balanced it well in my life. I've made mistakes. I've missed priorities. I've never missed my children's birthdays. I've never missed my children's award ceremonies or sporting events or anything like that. I have 2 daughters, but who are grown now. I think if anyone suffered, it was probably me because I never know when to stop. I'm the last one to go to bed or the last one to do it. So I would say my advice is find that time for you and be sure to take care of yourself. That just wasn't something we talked about when I was young and coming into my career. It was like you just put in the time and you just did it. And that's not valued as much today by anyone as it was back then. I am surrounded by fabulous partners, fabulous team members, fabulous family. My husband, my partner is great. It's all good. He's fabulous, and it's great having a partner in the field. It's hard because we often don't turn it off and, leave it. We're waking up, dreaming about it, talking about it. What are we doing today as always? But that's also because we love it. We love what we do. But he's great support. And then at work, the team is great. They're great at what they do. They deliver great people like the lady over here in the corner. Shout out to who just finishes my sentences for me. And I mean, she's great. So I think always, not saying you shouldn't love and serve and be accessible to everyone, but sometimes you do have to kind of close your circle and surround yourself and protect yourself with your inner circle. And so that's the emotional side. But I think just when you love what you do and you just dig deeper, there are sacrifices. I don't travel as much as I'd love to travel. I don't work out certainly ever. I need to, but I don't right now. Caregiving my children, my wonderful adult children have moved back home, as I think many do right now because the cost of real estate and rent is horrible. They're a great help in the home and great support and great humor and life. But my mother also has moved in, and so we're caring for a mother and full-time caregivers, and we have the full house, which I think used to be a condition, back in the 30s, 40s. I don't know. The multi-generational living is kind of on trend again. So it's not the life I thought I was going to have, but it's what we're doing. So vacations aren't quite what they used to be or what I thought they would be. I don't know if I'll ever retire. But it's rich. It's all good. The day in the life at work. There are days, there are things I love, and this is an interesting phenomenon. You get really good at what you do, and then you work your way out of doing what you love. Now you're managing while other people are doing it, and you're like, where's the joy in that? So that's not true. The joy is also in watching people achieve and watching people succeed, and watch that light bulb go off, and that's exciting. But there are days I just love to sit in my hole and work it out myself, you know, and the day that I don't have any calls scheduled and I can just sit in my office and work, I love it. But it's a weird balance, I think, just conditioning your brain and I think women are wired to do this a little differently than men. Men have their own skill sets that they're better at than women, typically speaking. I don't like generalizations, but we can think on multiple levels and multiple planes at the same time. And I had a friend of mine who talked about, I have 30 boxes open at the same time. You know, which box are you? Okay, I gotta close that box before I can do this one.
All the time.
And Tim and I will talk, joke about circular thinking versus linear thinking. And women will think circularly and never land the plane. And men are just like front to back, beginning to end, and we're dead. So the balance is somewhere in between. And when you have the both together on a team or in a family or in a marriage or whatever, it's a beautiful thing. So, but again, hope I haven't offended anyone on this listening, on this audience, but it's everyone brings something to the table, but understanding that with each other is helping with that balance.
So. And I feel like you learn everything based off of experiences. I mean, you wouldn't know all this based off what you've been through. So
I think we can all relate. Even like in us three, when we have school together, like studio together, and we're all like freaking out. One of us at some point is okay, guys, let's take a break. Let's stop.
Go for mango.
Or sing.
Yeah, or do something crazy. Because you do need to take a break. And we when did we start this podcast? In August? So we're just starting grad school. So we're just starting grad school again and feel the need to add more to our plate.
So this is very ambitious. We all are doing.
Just because we had a calling, right? And we wanted to do it, and we're going to find a way to do it.
You dig deeper. When it's something you believe in, you just dig deeper. It pays back. It does. Well, keep an eye on yourself. Make don't let yourselves go, and prioritize your health. And, whether you put your mask on first before you help your others, because you do have to be sharp and in position to do that. But be selective. I'm lousy at saying no, but learning to say no to the things that, don't really enhance what you're doing, and being very selective with your time and how you spend it and who you spend it with. The older you get, it's more important.
And the other thing as well is like that when we had this little light bulb moment for the podcast, I was telling the girls, like, I feel like we're going through life running, not looking at no direction, just trying to figure out how to do these 30 boxes at this, simultaneously. And we're not enjoying no process of nothing. So this podcast can be a moment to pause, right? Sit down, talk to people, and acknowledge all that you've been through. All these people are with you, right? And all these great things. And this is exactly what you're doing and everyone's doing. So we love to hear the stories and to share this moments. And so,
this is brilliant. This is really brilliant. You guys are great. It's succeeding. It's working. It's great. Even today, it was like changing channels 7 times, between an interview for a project, a partner meeting. What did I do in between? 2 or 3 design crits. And then I had to go home and look after my mom for a second while the nurses were coming. And I was like, I'm not going to get prepared for this podcast. I'm having a blast. This is great. You have succeeded in your mission. This is great.
It's great to hear.
Thank you. I know you've given us a bunch of advice, but we do want to ask, just for our listeners, what's that one advice that you could if you had someone in front of you that you wish you had given that advice to, what would that be?
Something that has kind of been an epiphany for me in my middle age now is look for connections. And connections has kind of become a key word for me. personally as well as in our business and in OFA, and that people matter more than stuff. People matter more than buildings. Finding the connections and the time to make those connections because they're meaningful, and that's what you will take with you. So that's at the higher, more ethereal, sappy, soppy level. But even just as you're fueling through your life experiences, your emotional, mental, intellectual account in your brain and in your heart, you've traveled, you've collected. They're not in silos. They're all connected. And you can work in healthcare today and industrial tomorrow and hospitality the next day. I personally have done prisons, hospitals, apartments, and hotels. I've built boxes for people in every form that you can build a box for people. And, but if you can draw from those connections, things get so much easier, and you start to see the synergies, and you can learn from it. You don't have to start over every single time. And, so just remembering those connections and then connecting, ultimately, this is our industry and our market, is connecting people to the experiences and telling that story wherever you are, and making whatever you do matter through the story. Connect the dots and connect people.
I feel like that's so important, just because, like, in my head, I felt like everything was in its own box. When in reality, it's so overlapped that now talking to people and talking to architects, talking to professionals, even talking to other people with other careers, it's like, wow, you think of something in such a different perspective that it honestly helps me in my career. And then we can actually grow and grow and grow and grow.
Many of us are just not good listeners. We're worried about the next thing we're going to say. But learning to listen, it takes such maturity to just listen and hear and understand. And again, a lot of us don't do it well, but it's important, because that's when you learn, and that's when you can make those connections and go, oh, okay, this makes sense. Or I heard this from this meeting I was in, or this person I was talking to, and it's transforming. But many people don't listen well. It's a discipline.
It's a discipline. And it's something I feel like you have to practice. Yeah. Because it's hard.
I would say another way of looking at connections, yes, we talk about it in our practice, and connecting the dots and bringing experiences from different projects or different markets to this specific, problem that you're trying to solve. But also our connections with our team, our connections with our neighbors. But then as we look into the community, and how do we reconnect as a profession with them? How do we serve? When we take our license or take our exams, and we get our license, and we have an oath, and we have our standards and our, that we live to, our integrity as architects, and our ethics codes, and everything that we live to as architects. But originally, and it's one of the oldest professions, we were leaders in the community. We were half of the presidents and, government officials, back in the day, were architects. And so we can be those leaders and have a voice, but making that connection back to the community, being involved at the policy level, serving on those city boards. How many architects are doing that in Orlando right now? I don't have a count, but I don't hear about it as much. But there are, there's the appearance review board and all the real sexy ones. Everybody wants to be on that, but there are a lot of different groups in the community that need the voice and the experience and the wisdom and mostly the experiences and the empathy that architects bring to and then the knowledge and the resources that we can make a difference. So we should use that and be helpful and be stewards in the community.
Thank you for that advice. We have been doing this thing in our podcast where the previous guest leaves a question for the next guest.
Oh, so my.
I'm going to ask you the question that the previous guest.
Who asked this question?
It's a secret. So the question is, what piece of media affected you the most in your pursuit of architecture that completely changed your brain chemistry? It could be books, it could be music, it could be a play, it could be anything.
Well, as I kind of alluded, I was in a pretty humble upbringing. I had a stay-at-home mom who was an amazing homebound, but amazing mom. Her job was to take care of the kids. My dad traveled a lot, pretty humble roots. So I didn't have exposure. They traveled. We didn't get to travel that much. So I didn't have a broad worldview as a child or a young teenager or anything like that. again, I was heavy in the arts and working. Played music. I played piano for about 10 years. Played guitar, played violin. I played, so I had inherently the arts were part of what I did, but I never ever associated that with a career or anything. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I was always very spatially aware, but I didn't understand it. Like those in the audience that might be a little older like me, but in the modern tract houses, if there's such an oxymoron, but in the day and age of the cookie cutter tract houses that started coming on that had vaulted ceilings and interesting volumes that were more than just the flat ceilings. I remember laying on the floor at my friend's house going, that's a cool space up there. I want to play up there. I don't want to play here. It's flat. I want to be up there where there's different space. Or again, manipulating something as silly as a dollhouse, that it just was, I was so frustrated to be limited by a box. I wanted to modify it and morph it into something else. So a medium might have been my dollhouse, that sounds really so silly, but for a little girl, but it was space, and it was something I could control or wanted to control and wanted to manipulate and make more interesting and more experiential. I didn't want to be limited to the box. And I think as a woman practitioner, and I look forward to the day that we don't genderize or racialize, if that's a word, that we don't speak about it, that it's all just so inclusive and so normal. But in the day, one of my favorite books has been Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. And I'm not a believer in disparaging the other gender or my male counterparts or anything like that. It's just, it has been a male dominated profession for so long, but there have been many women succeeding in it. And it's a great book on how to maneuver in those environments in a positive way, keeps you in a positive light with your team, how to use your voice, find your voice, find that seat at the table and do so positively. So that probably transformed me a little bit more in my more seasoned years of grappling my way through a male dominated profession in my earlier years. I wish I'd known it then, wish I'd read it then, but makes us less defensive and less, we don't need a chip on our shoulders. We don't need to be feeling that we have to prove something. We are at the table. Find your seat,
Yeah, I like that.
So
I like that. Yep. Find your seat.
Take your seat.
Sit down.
And use your voice.
Yeah.
No, it's good. I'm kind of lame on that answer though in general because I didn't have a strong medium, a dollhouse, and a book about women.
It's a mix. It doesn't need to be like one thing necessarily.
I mean, everyone's different. They grew up differently. They saw things differently.
I think the art that brought the intuitive and the being able to just be the analytical, because I was very rigid in my, I was a pretty strict upbringing. So I had my rules and I was a rule follower, but art school kind of gave me a little bit of freedom and being able to balance those two, I think were probably informed me more than I'm giving credit.
Well, thank you so much, Debra. It's been amazing.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Next time we will bring wine.
Not for the next person, for me.
No, for you. Part two.
We'll do it again.